It's the Celtics and the Knicks tonight. What should we expect from this game and from a potential playoff series? It's a crossover preview episode.
Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the show. I'm John Karalis. Today's show is all about the Celtics and the Knicks. It's a crossover episode with Gavin Schall, host of the Locked On Knicks podcast. We get into a preview, what to expect from each other. The second segment will be me asking him questions. The first segment is him asking me questions about the Celtics. We recorded this before Jaylen Brown was ruled out, so no Jaylen Brown in this game. Still waiting for word on Derrick White and Neemias Queta. Jayson Tatum is playing, but let's just dive into this podcast, our crossover episode with Gavin Schall.
All right, guys, as promised, it is a Locked On Knicks, Locked On Celtics crossover. For those of you on the Locked On Celtics side, I am Gavin Schall, the host of Locked On Knicks. For those of you on the Knicks side, you know him, you love him. He's John Karalis, the host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. And it has been an incredible season for the Boston Celtics, much to the chagrin of Knicks fans everywhere who thought, all right, 1 year where we don't have to worry about those guys, but Boston has persisted. And on top of that, they added Jayson Tatum, and that is exactly where I wanted to start, John. Looking from afar, early returns have been fantastic on Jayson Tatum coming back. What's the experience been like inside the building having him back on this team, and how has Boston reincorporated it?
Yeah, looking from not afar, from very close, also looks very good. Shockingly so. I've been saying, like, you don't usually get to do both. Come back from a devastating injury early and also look like yourself pretty quickly. But that's what Tatum's doing. It's defying a lot of the expectations. But I think what really happened here is Tatum's kind of initial, when it happened, where it happened, the fact that it happened in New York, right next to the hospital for special surgery, and the fact that the surgeon, the top surgeon, Achilles surgeon in the world, was there, is like, yeah, swing by tomorrow, I'll stitch you up. That all played a huge role because they got to skip a lot of the things that normally hold a guy back. So fast forward to 10 months later, where he came out of the rehab is probably 2-3 months ahead of where people normally are because of all of that stuff. So Tatum comes out, and instead of playing 17 minutes in a game, in two stints, like off the bench, like we've seen other guys do around the league. Steph Curry came off the bench. Victor Wembanyama came off the bench. Tatum comes in and starts and looks really good and got past the initial kind of rust pretty quickly, and he still has things that he needs to do, but the fact that he's a reasonable percentage of himself, whatever you want to call it, 80, 90, 95, it's much further ahead. It changes the complete calculus of what this team is, because I was expecting, hey, 75% of Tatum, he's going to be not a role player, but very clearly a second fiddle. And now he's not. Now he's Tatum, and it does change the dynamic a lot.
I guess to that point, I mean, what has the dynamic been like between him and Jaylen Brown? Is even amongst the Celtics, just extraordinary success the last 5, 6, basically this whole era with those two guys. Like, it seems like there's been a little bit of a tug of war there at times. And I know that was like a concern when Tatum was coming back, just because Jalen is having this incredible season. And I think part of it is like, it's kind of the same theory as Jalen Brunson. Like, what can a really talented player do when you empower them completely? And the answer for Jaylen Brown seems to be, especially with some of the injuries related, potentially a first team All-NBA type season. Like, has that been a back and forth, or has Jayson Tatum been pretty content to be like, all right, I will have my moments, I will have my stretches to take over. At the end of the game, it's Brown's team. At the end of the game, it's Tatum's team, or have they just kind of worked it out synergistically, and that hasn't been an issue at all?
I think it's skewed more Brown, but I think it's a little bit more kind of more equal than it's been.
Yeah.
The way I've been putting it is, you took Tatum's job and you took Brown's job, and you kind of elevated Brown, put it together, and then split it equally between the two, understanding that Tatum is still not fully athletically himself, and that's gonna take the whole summer, but he is getting closer to that as well. But Tatum seems very happy to just kind of stand in a corner sometimes and be a floor spacer, but also be a threat to come off pin downs and get the ball on the move and be a full participant in the offense. And his playmaking, Tatum's playmaking, has been just smooth, kind of natural, kind of more natural than ever. And you go around with Jalen, who has developed into a really good kind of distributor himself. Jalen's obviously a more natural kind of he's the scorer first, passer second. Tatum has become more equal in a lot of that, but the way both of those guys move the ball now, it could be either or. It more than it has been in the past.
Do you see this team as a championship contender at this point? As I remember preseason, we were having these conversations, and I think we're both on the same page. Like not even is this like not a playoff level front court, but this is potentially like borderline not an NBA level front court. And then Neemias Queta has like just had an exceptional season. Obviously, Boston has gotten so much from their group of young wings and seemingly found like gem after gem after gem, and all the underlying numbers, net rating. You want to go deeper into different numbers, like the specific areas Boston dominates, the specific areas Joe Mazzulla has decided to lead into. Like all to me, like watching this team play and looking at the numbers, like scream like this is a team with a legit shot to win a championship. Is that the feeling in Boston, or is it more of a feeling of like might be the best team in the East, but there are three other teams that are essentially all at that level? Maybe the list is shorter than that. Maybe the list is longer than that. Potentially facing like a ferocious like Charlotte team or Atlanta team or Philly team in the first round. The East is deeper than ever, and it's more of a crapshoot. Or do you feel like Boston is like maybe the favorite to win the Eastern Conference at this point?
It's weird that I can say it's both because I feel like the Celtics can be the favorites. If you sit there and say the Celtics are the favorites to come out, all the things that you said, we can go down all the stats, the advanced stats, and all of that, and be like, yeah, man, Boston is the team to beat. There's the one question. Now, every time I've asked a question about the Celtics, they've been like, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll address that next game. Boom. Yeah. Now it's the playoffs soon. And I don't know what this team is as a playoff team. I can guess, I can assume, but for all of the greatness that Neemias Queta has shown us, for all of the capable bench production that Baylor Shireman and Jordan Walsh and Hugo Gonzalez and these kind of role players have shown, I haven't seen it I haven't seen them be dependent on for as much as they're going to be dependent on in the playoffs. And that's going to be the big difference. They might address that in game one against whomever they play in the first series. And I'll just shut up again, which is I've been doing a whole lot of shutting up when it comes to questions about the Celtics this year, but it's still a question that I think is fair to ask. We know Jalen is going to be great. We know Jayson is going to be great. We know Derrick White, Payton Pritchard, but even you get to like a Pritchard and a Hauser who you can depend on a lot. Those, when we talk about this matchup, like we're going to talk about later, it always comes down to who can you attack.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what happens when these guys get attacked. The beauty of the Celtics in the past has been you can't really attack any of these guys.
Yeah.
Now you beat the Celtics last year because the thing you could attack was the glass, and the Celtics were vulnerable there. And that was kind of like a weird sixth man that you could attack. The Celtics are better at that, I think, now, but you do have guys that you can attack. And that's where I can say, can the Celtics beat? First round, they should win. Can they beat if it's the Knicks in the second round? Sure, they can win that series. Yeah. Could they beat the Pistons in the conference? Sure, they can win that series. They could also lose. They could also lose to the Knicks. They could also lose to the Pistons. And I wouldn't be like tremendously shocked. So would I, if I'm putting my $50 in Monopoly money on a team to come out of the East, I'll put it on Boston. But I'm also not counting on the return necessarily. I'm not spending my winnings yet either.
Yeah, that is exactly where I'm at with it. We had this conversation the other day on Locked On Knicks, and the way I framed it is I think Boston is probably the most complete team and probably the most sure thing. right now, they don't have the same level of insulation and the margin for error that they had last year. And I thought that went away for them when Kristaps Porzingis was sick. And if he was healthy, I still probably lean towards the idea Boston wins that series. I mean, who knows with some of the shooting and the way Knicks closed out those games. But that was the one thing the Knicks didn't have an answer to. And I do think the Knicks have more plausible answers, even defensively against Boston now. But Boston is also, and we'll get into this more third segment, they are better at picking on cat-specific weaknesses than any team in the NBA. And just in general, the Knicks starting lineup specific weaknesses that Mike Brown doubled down on last night and said, I know they've sucked for 2 years, but I don't really see us making a change. So I think that could potentially spell trouble for the Knicks in a potential series, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll take a break. We'll come back. And Celtics fans can learn a little bit about the New York Knicks before we talk about keys to the matchup between these two teams.
Today's show is brought to you by Wayfair. Wayday is here, and if you've been thinking about upgrading your space, this is the time to do it. We were talking about some of the best deals of the year on furniture, decor, outdoor essentials, everything you need to refresh your home. During Wayday, Wayfair is offering up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything, making it very easy to find pieces that fit your style and your budget. My wife and I, we love to exchange Wayfair links to freshen things up. Some outdoor stuff, some indoor stuff. I think half of the stuff upstairs is Wayfair. It's super easy to filter all of this by style, size, price, so you're not wasting time scrolling. Everything is within your budget. There are verified products vetted by specialists, so you know you're getting quality. So whether you're upgrading a room, adding outdoor space, or just finding something that ties your space together, makes the whole process simple from start to finish. Wayday is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking about up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. Go to wayfair.com April 25th through 27th to shop Wayday. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Today's show also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd is awesome. The energy is great. Madison Square Garden will be bumping for this game. The TD Garden is always a great place to be. Game Time is the go-to app to get you tickets fast. It puts the advantage back in your hands. When you go onto the Game Time app, you'll see a price for the tickets you want. That's the price you're going to see at checkout. You'll see a view from the seat. If you don't know what you're looking at in the arena, if you don't know what to expect from a certain section number, it shows you what you're going to see. If you like the view from that section, do a zone deal. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats. You can save a little bit of money that way. It's great for a last-minute option. With NBA tickets showing up at solid prices, everything is quick, intuitive, and stress-free. I have used Game Time plenty. I can attest to the stress-free nature of this. The seat view is great. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKED, locked on, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And if you're going to use the web, it's gametime.co. gametime.co. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day and checking out this crossover. It's a bonus episode. I've lost count. I think this is episode number 7 or 8 of the week. So it's been a heavy week podcasting wise, and I do appreciate you. I want your feedback on all the bonus podcasts. Is it enough, too much, not enough, whatever? Let me know in the YouTube comments section. This show is free and available Monday through Friday. Bonus podcast on the weekends as well when they play Friday night against the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Celtics on SI. I've been covering the team for 20 years, doing this podcast for 10. I've got a couple books out about the team as well. Now let's get into my questions for Gavin Schall about the New York Knicks. Okay, is this Karl Anthony Towns' fault, Jalen Brunson's fault, or Mike Brown's fault? It's funny that I'm even asking it that way, because you've won now more games than you won last year. You're the third best offense in the league. You're, even with all of the deficiencies, the 7th ranked defense. There have been flashes of, oh yeah, here we go. Here are the Knicks. But there have also been enough flashes of like, ooh, all right. And Cat, for all of his abilities, hasn't been fully Karl Anthony Towns. So when you're looking at, there's a lot of doom and gloom around a team that is still in the mix for a 2nd seed and holds a tiebreaker over the Celtics, by the way. What's fueling that doom and gloom, and can you pin it on one person?
I can't pin it on one person. I can't pin it on one lineup, but I think it's the starting lineup. Last I look, I haven't checked this morning. They were good. They won their 18 and a half minutes, which is a crazy number for a bad lineup against a great team, but they won it by 3 against the Atlanta Hawks. I think mainly because the Hawks made the I don't even know if it was a strange decision because it might have just been holding their cards for the playoffs, but they decided to guard the Knicks traditionally. And if you guard that lineup traditionally, it can be a great lineup. If you guard it with the way Boston and other teams implemented, where put a big on Josh Hart, put a wing on Cat, they are not likely to have a lot of success with that group. And I believe they only have a 0.7 net rating, whereas a team, they have close to like a +7 net rating. And like that just tells you like, what are all the other lineups doing if this lineup that you're playing the overwhelming amount of your minutes sucks? And that means they're dominating with, like, we talk on our show a lot about 5 out, but it's not even 5 out specifically. It's anything but this lineup that Mike Brown came out yesterday and said, like, nah, we thought about it. We talked about Landry Shamet, but we're gonna stick with it. And maybe the point of variance there is like, all right, if there's just stuff beyond our knowing, right? Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges has a special deal with James Dolan where they're always going to start no matter what. Maybe in the playoffs that switches to Deuce McBride is coming off the bench, but he plays 36 minutes every game. And the impact of that starting lineup is lessens a little bit, which I think is totally plausible. Right now, he's just coming off an injury, so we don't necessarily know what that's going to look like. And maybe he closes every game, and then you get off to the slow starts that have defined this Knicks team. But you close stronger. To me, like that is the central point of pessimism that I have, that they just consistently, but thanks to that starting lineup, get off to terrible starts in games that you are playing a lineup like at times like a third of the game to nearly half a game that just isn't very good and doesn't work very well together. And I think it does point to just some broader roster construction issues where I think on paper they constructed a team that makes an incredible amount of sense, right? You have like your alpha in Jalen Brunson, who maybe in the tertiary stuff doesn't check everything you need in a playoff number one. I think as a scorer, he more than checks every box as a playoff number one. Like he has just been a historically great volume scorer in the playoffs over the last couple of seasons. Cat is just, even on the nights, to your point, like he hasn't had a good shooting season, and yet he's basically led the Knicks in net rating all year because he just has an incredible positive impact offensively while having the best defensive season of his career. OG and Mikal are like the two-way wings, right? Every team in the league, maybe not 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, but they wanted to trade 3 or 4 first-round picks for those guys. Like there's a reason they were both so desired, and it's because if you have defensive deficient superstars, those are the types of players you want to put around them. And they have, as the Celtics found out, in Mitchell Robinson, like a massive weapon off the bench. Same in Deuce McBride, more depth than last year, a little bit more, not a ton more, but a little bit more coaching creativity than last year. I say all this to say, to your argument, all the pieces of a title team or a near title team, Oklahoma City's in their own category, are there. I just don't think they've maximized this group. And for the second straight year under a new head coach, they're making all the same mistakes. And that's what creates the sense of inevitability that they might be talented enough to get through 2 rounds, even 3 rounds, but eventually they're going to run into a team that's as talented and better coached, and they're going to lose.
Are they using Karl Anthony Towns the right way? I think this is the big question. Like he has, I just read a quote from him where we're 70 something games in. He's like, yeah, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. I'm laughing because he said that quote once every 2 weeks this entire season.
Yeah. Like I'm still figuring it out. Like what is there to still figure out? Like I've seen the comparisons of like, they're trying to turn him into Domantas Sabonis. They're trying to turn him into a hub to run the offense through. And is that just a flat out mistake and you're just in too deep, sunk cost here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to be repetitive on this, but it is just the starting lineup thing, right? Because if you put 5 shooters out there, and maybe there are teams like the Thunder leaned into this. I'm curious if Boston would, like, the Knicks could start 5 out and they would just put Queta on OG Anunoby and put a wing on Cat anyways, and the Knicks would still have to solve for that, and it would be like a different. And the question would be, all right, can OG like attack the center then and make that painful enough that Boston would have to switch back? So I don't want to be like too smug about this. Obviously, the Knicks coaching staff is smart. Obviously, they've thought about this. They might, beyond whatever the political implications are, they might have their own reasons that I'm missing, that I'm just not seeing. But generally, when a center's on Cat, you run that Brunson Cat 2-man game, and we saw it last night against the Hawks, who are a fantastic defense, have been as good defensively like the last 25 games, basically any team this side of Oklahoma City and maybe Detroit. I got to run the numbers again on that. But like Cat scored effortlessly in the third after like kind of a meek start to the game. And he scored 14 points in the third quarter. And whether it was shooting threes, whether it was stopping at the foul line and popping like mid-range jumpers in the short roll, whether it was getting into like his isolation bag in the post, whether it was scoring off of offensive rebounds, whether it was like catching at the perimeter, but because it's Jalen Brunson on the other end of that 2-man game, you're getting a hard closeout and you can pump and go. And he's as good as any big in the league, right? At that pump and go drive, taking contact at the rim and still finishing. Like, he might have lost some athleticism from his apex. That's been a conversation amongst Knicks fans all year, whether he still has quite the same juice even last year. Like his dunks don't look quite as bouncy as they did. And yet I find him to be generally pretty unstoppable when an opposing center that's not Victor Wembanyama has to guard him. And if the Knicks can get to that, it becomes really, really difficult in other teams. You put a wing on him, it for a variety of reasons, it becomes a lot simpler. But as you know, like what happens most often, what Boston does so well, you throw that late double and it really flummoxes him.
Yeah.
He turns the ball over, I think, on something like 50% of his post-ups, which is a crazy, crazy number. So there's just answers there if it's not a center guarding him.
So then the traditional way to guard, well, the way the Celtics guard, they'll put Queta on Josh Hart and be like, go ahead, go nuts. But he's a 40% 3-point shooter. Kind of. Okay, so that's that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
So how real is it? How real is it? Can he be good enough in a series? Can he have 4 games in a series where he's 5 of 7?
It's not real in the sense that he still doesn't want to shoot threes, and he consistently passes up wide open threes, and it's the single most frustrating experience I've had watching basketball. And I spent a full season watching Emmanuel Mudiay and Alonzo Trier-John while doing this job. And like that should be the and his Freedom Cantor, Kyle Quinn's sick. I'm not going to critique Kyle Quinn, but point being, like, I've watched some terrible basketball and I've never had more frustration than watching Josh, who, to your point, is having a fantastic shooting season for his career. He's not a great shooter, but is a perfectly fine shooter. Is honestly like a talent. Like, he's shooting on pull-up jumpers this year. I think something like 44% on like pull-up threes. Like, he's putting up borderline like Klay Thompson numbers on pull-up threes this year, but he just doesn't feel comfortable taking them. And there have been times in the playoffs he's been back into a corner. He's taken a bunch. Like, I remember the reason the Knicks got out of the first round 2 years ago and beat the Sixers is because he shot like 12 of 18 on threes in the first 2 games of that series. And that swung the series. So we've seen times where Josh is back into a corner and he kind of steals up and he takes them and he makes them. So I keep that in the back of my head as very real data. But when he doesn't shoot them, you're in trouble. When the Knicks don't consistently, like the Spurs tried, I'm going to say the most aggressive version of what we call that ghost coverage, right? Like where Wemby's on him, but Wemby is guarding the rim, right? And you're saying Josh Hart have a field day. And for one quarter, it was a disaster. And then Mike Brown, something snapped in his head and he just started screening with Josh Hart every single time. And the Knicks outscored the Spurs by like 40 points over the rest of that game because it was Jalen Brunson playing 2-on-1 basically with the screener. And I think Boston, they strike a middle ground with that a little bit more. I don't think it'll ever be that easy. Like in the playoffs last year, my question I kept coming back to, because the Knicks did lean into that and they did lean into Josh as a screener. I'm like, all right, Boston's this incredible offense. Can you outscore them playing through Josh Hart, even if he has an advantage against an opposing big? And I think the answer, like, unless you just get those like 90s style games you got last year, is generally going to be no. But to your question, like, no, the 40% from 3, I don't think is real because he doesn't want to shoot those shots.
Well, we can get into the keys here to this matchup, because I just really think the Celtics are going to throw. Why go away from what works? The Celtics have a lot of matchups that they can throw at the Knicks. It's going to be very interesting. I don't know exactly how much they're going to show in this final game, but also it could be it's a kind of a must win. So I don't know. You want to dive into those?
Yeah, let's get into it. We'll talk keys to the game, keys to a potential series between these two teams next on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Celtics.
Today's show is brought to you by Indeed. You have a job to fill, but it's crazy at work, right? You got stacks of things that you need to get to, inboxes overflowing, and you're just hoping that somebody good will come along. Don't do that. be like the Celtics, be like an NBA team. They have advanced scouts. People go out there and find the players that fit all of the boxes, check all of the boxes that they're looking for. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs is going to do that for you. They'll find the person with the skills, experience, and location that you need, so you're not just crossing your fingers when it comes time to hire. Right now, Indeed people are going to make 27 hires on Indeed. In this minute that I'm talking to you, 27 people are going to get hired on Indeed using Indeed Sponsored Jobs, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates that check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. You will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Today's show is also brought to you by BetterHelp. Financial stress right now is a big problem for a lot of people. It's not just numbers. It can affect your sleep. It can affect your relationships, your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. You do not want things building up. Therapy is very helpful. Just talking through things to get them off your chest can be very, very helpful. And I've gone through therapy. I've done it in my life. I find it very helpful. It's something that's going to take a lot of the pressure off of you. Understanding what you're thinking, understanding what you're going through. This isn't financial advice. It's dealing with the stress. It's dealing with the expectations. It's understanding that too much pressure can spill into other areas of your life. How can you deal with that? How can you properly process all of this? So check out BetterHelp. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you for making your Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. And thank you for being an everydayer, being with me every Monday through Friday and listening to all these bonus podcasts. Now join the Everydayer Club. The Everydayer Club is ad-free audio for $5 a month or $50 for the year if you want to pay it all up front. You can also get access to our Discord server for in-game chats, live chats. Check it out at LockedOnCeltics.supercast.com, LockedOnCeltics.supercast.com. Let's wrap up the show with Gavin Schall previewing the Celtics and the Knicks.
All right, John, I want to start here. We talk a lot, I think much to the chagrin of my fan base. I'm sure the Celtics fans listening to this. I think people think I'm a doomer when it comes to Knicks Celtics. Last year, I think I picked Boston in 5. So I don't have a lot of credibility on this topic, but the one area I've talked about in a potential matchup between the two teams that I think is honestly ultimately the reason the Knicks won the series last year is they were kind of able to, in a surprising way for two guys who have a ton of playoff experience, bait Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown into playing one-on-one, right? By putting up some tasty morsels, being like, hey, you want Jalen Brunson on an island? Go to town. You want Karl-Anthony Towns on an island? Have a field day, right? And I think that worked incredibly well for the Knicks for a couple different reasons. One, Brunson and Cat are both, like Cat especially, are sneaky, solid switch defenders. Cat, I actually think, is very good at that. And just because of his reputation, a lot of people do not recognize it. So they were able to largely force contested jumpers. And like there's a world where Tatum and Brown made every one of those and the Knicks lost that series and they shot pretty poorly on them and the Knicks won. Two, it puts OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, I think, as much as OG in particular is like a elite one-on-one defender, I think the best way you can use those guys is elite gap helpers. And OG in particular, I think, is possibly better than anyone in the NBA at that particular skill, right? The ability to shoot in, get a hand on the ball, recover to a three-point shooter. But I also don't think Tatum and Brown consistently made the Knicks pay, like when they had spray options and they could get into those swing sequences that just broke your heart if you weren't a Celtics fan last year. And Boston, I mean, some of that was they would try and they would miss threes and the Knicks recovered well and they scrambled well. Some of that, though, was just an unwillingness to make a pass. I'm curious, a year later, you talked about Tatum's playmaking looking as clean as ever, Jaylen Brown getting a full year of on-ball reps, getting to see what every single defense in the NBA throws at him as a number one option. Do you think those two guys are potentially more equipped equipped to make the right play this year. And maybe the even the further upside of that is like more time with Pritchard and Hauser on the floor. And you go from like A- shooters and Holiday, and obviously White will have a lot of time out there, but you get a little bit more time on the floor with A to A+ shooters in those two, making them even a little bit harder to guard in those situations.
Yeah, the spacing is going to be the interesting part of it all, because I think more so than the passing ability for Jalen, it's the ball handling ability that I think has increased. Now, he's still prone to the dribbling too much and getting into traffic, and when he plays in a crowd and tries to dribble his way out of it, it's going to be a turnover and a layup on the other end. So that's where his recognition has to come in, and the Celtics have to help him out when he gets into those kind of modes to give him an outlet. But generally, I think his ball handling this year, his left hand, all of that has been really great. He's been able to get past the initial line of defense. He's able to finish kind of in a crafty way around the rim. It's not just trying to dunk on people. It's, using the rim to block off a defender and finishing on the other side. He's doing a good job with that. And so I think with some additional spacing, he can get to the rim. And if you help, you are helping off of Hauser. You are helping off of Derrick White. You're helping, you're not going to help off of Tatum. And it's just going to be a question of how do you guard Neemias Queta? And Queta's been amazing at finding gaps. And he, just from the beginning of the season till now, operating on the baseline, operating in the dunker spot, relocating, figuring out, okay, here's a drive. I'm going to go from the dunker spot. I'm going to rotate up to the middle of the paint, and I'm going to get a dump off there when Jalen gets trapped under the basket. I'm going to hit a little floater. Like those kind of plays are going to help a lot for the Celtics, where you didn't have that against the Knicks last year. You didn't have it against the Knicks earlier this season. Like it's really important to understand that what Queta has become this season has been even a gradual progression throughout the year. So the guy that you remember from the last matchup is not the guy that he is now. And that's a testament to his work and all of that. But he's become a much more dangerous type of player and operating in space. So all of the stuff that you're saying, it has kind of gets addressed by the progression of the Jalen's handle, the Queta progression, and yes, having those shooters out there that are willing and able to fire away. And Hauser catch and shoots are deadly. And Derrick White's shooting numbers this year haven't been great, but because he's been doing a lot of pull-up shooting, he's getting back to the catch and shoot now that Tatum is back. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to show up a little bit more too.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And I think the vertical spacing is a huge factor, because as we mentioned, like KP wasn't himself. So you didn't have that stretch big, you didn't have him around the rim. It was, if I'm remembering correctly, a lot of Drew Holiday in the dunker spot, which is obviously a weapon and he can work from there, but that's different than having like a 6'11", 7-foot, like athletic freak around the basket who seems to have incredible chemistry with Jayson Tatum, even though they haven't played a ton together. What are kind of your biggest questions from a Knicks perspective outside of obviously the starting lineup and how they guard Josh and Cat?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is going to be for me, Mitchell Robinson. Yeah. And we know what's going to happen when you start, right? We know how the Celtics are going to defend with Kate and all of that. I want to know what happens with Mitchell Robinson, and when the Celtics, like, I don't know how the Celtics are going to throw. Are they going to throw like Tatum at the 5? What do you do if Tatum's at the 5? What do you do if Nikola Vucevic is out there and you run a lot of pick and pop type of stuff and Robinson is pulled away from the rim? Like Robinson to me is what changed that series last year. And, he came in and instantly crushed the Celtics on the offensive boards, crushed the Celtics defensively. And because Porzingis was sick, you didn't really have a super effective floor spacer. You had to rely on Al Horford, and there's a lot of Al Horford. Yeah. So Vooch, or even Luka Garza, who has been amazingly effective for the Celtics in spurts. You could throw 5 minutes of Luka Garza out there, and he's a 40% 3-point shooter this year. So I'm curious to see how the Mitchell Robinson, because the bench matchups are going to be, I think, where this series, this game, any series against the Celtics might be where it gets decided. The minutes, obviously, the minutes for Tatum and how that's going to play out, but how these bench units, Pritchard coming in, Shireman, Walsh, those guys, and Vooch, who, as we're recording this, has played one. He'll probably play another game between recording and airing this podcast. So I don't know how he's going to look. That might be the single biggest thing that the Celtics need between now and whenever they may face the Knicks in a playoff series. Can you get Vucevic out there and use him as that hub and kind of draw Robinson away? Or is Robinson going to get a chance to just protect the rim and you get into pull-up jumpers and all of that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The Knicks have not really taken a page out of the Celtics and other teams' books, and at least as far as I've noticed, and put Mitch on a wing and let him be a rover. And they've generally just had him stick on the opposing big. And at times, I mean, we saw it last year when he came back against the Celtics and KP hit a few threes on him. He can be, for someone who's a really good defender overall, and is similar to Queta in a different way, right? Because obviously Queta, this is his first time playing really big minutes on a great team. Mitch, it was more so because of the injury. He got off to a really slow start this year defensively, and there were questions of all right, maybe it's just been too many injuries, too many miles on him. He's not that guy anymore. And you go from that to last night, where in 20 minutes he is 5 combined steals and blocks against the Hawks and completely takes over that game defensively. The one continued weakness for him is exactly what you say, stretch fives, because it's surprising at times because he is a little inattentive, and it's not even the Wemby and Chet guys where it's you have to be wary about them blowing by you. Even with guys like Vucevic, who obviously he can dribble and get into a post up, but at this point in his career, he's not going to be doing the cat thing, right? Where it's pump and go and you can't close that hard. But Mitch on handoffs, and maybe in a playoff series, he'll be a little more attentive. We saw with Okongwu yesterday, he will just forget where he is on the floor for a moment. It's similar to Cat, just have a brain fart and give up a three, and 1 or 2 threes in a game from Vucevic or Garza could absolutely swing the series. I do think in the minutes, if Mitch is on without Queta, I think Boston's going to have all the same issues as last year, keeping him off the glass. Obviously, Vucevic's experience, he's strong. I just think Mitch will have an athletic advantage there at this point that will allow him to really hit the glass. And I'm curious in particular, the minutes where he's on the floor with Deuce McBride, because those are the Knicks' 2 accelerants playing together at once. And I think Deuce is just a substantially better player than he was last season. He still has to find that rhythm after missing 3 months, and we'll see if he can do that. But he's developed an ability to get some self-created threes and push pace for the Knicks. And I think those two together could help the Knicks win those minutes. But the flip side of that, to me, is Boston, the stretch 5 element that you mentioned. And then also they're so good at contorting the Knicks defense. I mean, every defense, but the Knicks defense in particular, putting stress on them. And then you have those young wings where the Knicks try to hide Jalen Brunson. And we saw, I think it was in the second matchup of the season that Boston won, where that was just a major issue with whether it was Walsh or Hugo, just crashing relentlessly. And there's really nothing Jalen Brunson can do about that. So I'm really curious about the offensive rebounding element. And in your opinion, we can maybe finish on this, how many, Ron Harper Jr. has been great and he's in that mix now. How many of those young wings will Mazzulla trust in the playoff rotation, actually play consistently against the Knicks?
Yeah, I think Gonzalez is out. I think Harper would be tough. Gonzalez is a 19-year-old rookie. I don't think he's going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals.
But he was the best player on the floor for 7 minutes of that second game. He was playing incredible defense on Cat.
And yes. And so I say that knowing that Joe Mazzulla might bust them out. You never know. And one of the hallmarks of this year's Celtics has been the ability for guys to go through stretches of DNPs and then get minutes and produce right away. It's been kind of black magic-y kind of thing. Like Luka Garza, for example, they traded for Vooch. Vucevic comes in, plays 12 games, and Garza basically DNPs. And then Vucevic gets hurt. Garza comes in, plays great. Didn't miss a beat. Jordan Walsh, DNPs. Then he starts to get back into the rotations. Shireman did the same thing. Like, how do these guys not kind of bristle at the in and out of the lineup? So Gonzalez has been moved to the bench as the season winds down. So I don't think he's going to play. But if the Celtics are missing a bunch of shots and you need offensive rebounding, an Ugo, Luka Garza, Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh kind of group, some combination of those guys, they're just really intense offensive rebounders. Any combination of those two guys can get in and really change a game with their energy. So I think you're going to see the normal starting five. Payton Pritchard obviously is 6. Vucevic will have to get minutes at 7. And then your 8th guy is probably going to be Jordan Walsh, big rangy defender. He's going to be the guy that if Mitchell Robinson is going to help off of somebody, if you're going to put him on a wing, it's either going to be Jordan Walsh or Baylor Shireman, and go ahead, guys, I dare you to shoot. And that's what I would do if I was a coach. And they might beat you in a game or two, but it's going to be tough. So that's a lot of words to get to. I don't know what Joe does because he's been unpredictable. One of the lasting quotes from this season was a practice, like in the middle of the season, we were talking about his rotation. He goes, "What rotation? We don't have a rotation. You don't know who's going to play from game to game. That's why everybody stays ready. We get everybody ready and we go with what the game needs." They've all bought into that. So I can sit here and say these 3 guys know, and then after game 1 or game 2, I'll look like an idiot because they play 30 minutes and they help the Celtics win. So that's Joe Mazzulla's Celtics.
Yeah, we'll see. There's been a little bit of that with Mike Brown as well, and right now he's telegraphing that it is going to be Jordan Clarkson in the playoff rotation. Color me skeptical that lasts. I really hope the Knicks bring back Tyler Kolek because I think he just adds like a zippiness and quick decision making element that they desperately need on offense, and even with the bench unit, I think could really elevate them. Jose Alvarado is obviously an option as a pest and an extra ball handler. But right now, I think the Knicks, like the starting lineup is its own battle. The bench, the Celtics have one of the great difference makers in the game in Payton Pritchard. I think the Knicks have 2 of them in Deuce and Mitch. And then I'd say the Celtics secondary guys are a little bit more sure things. And we're going to have to see who the Knicks go with and how those guys operate. Landry Shamit's had his moments this year, hasn't been quite as good of late, but you know what? We're probably going to do this whole podcast again. I don't even want to say that because then the Knicks are going to get swept in the first round. We will maybe do this whole podcast again in a month, but until that time, Knicks fans, be sure to subscribe and check out John Karalis and Locked On Celtics so you stay ready for that series. Celtics fans, of course, you're always welcome to come over and leave a mean comment on the Locked On Knicks YouTube page. But until then, we'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Celtics.